Today's prayer will be by Debbie Sickles, the pledge will be by Dr. Sandin, and the four-way test by Katie Ridge.
Let us bow our heads. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day, the beautiful weather that we have seen and the rain that you gave our land. It was so needed. We thank you. We thank you for all the blessings that you give us, and please bless the kids and the teachers and the mamas and the daddies and grandparents and everybody going back to school, that they may have a safe and glorious year. Please be with our club as we go through and do the endeavors you'd like us to do, and bless this food to the nourishment of our body. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance to our country. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in the four-way test of the things you think, say, or do. First,
Is the truth.
second,
Is the fair law concerned.
third,
Will it yield good welfare and friendships?
fourth.
Will it be beneficial to the law concerned.
Thank you. Do we have any visiting Rotarians? Oh. Do we have any visiting Rotarians? Rotarians with guests. Tracy, that's you.
She was here last week.
Oh, well, then why are you here? And we have John and Elaine in the back. Stand up. Y'all didn't eat?
What?
You didn't eat?
No, thanks. But you know what they did do? Agreed to volunteer for Cotton Patch Challenge.
Did they get an application to be a road? Did they get an application?
I don't know if John volunteered.
Somebody's birthday's tomorrow.
What?
Whose birthday's tomorrow?
David Weiland? Again?
You gonna be 29?
At least.
But the more important question is, are you skydiving tomorrow?
I'll go on the 16th.
Well, there we go.
He's looking for people to go with him.
What trip?
I already signed up.
Would you say you had one more spot to go?
I got one more spot.
One more spot to go
I got a
skydiving.
picture
I
of
love
it.
recommendation.
It would take a big spot.
Oh, you would make a picture.
I would make a big spot. So my dad there were two jobs that Dad told me I couldn't do: highway patrol and repo man. And my wife said, "You are not jumping out of an airplane because I have a problem walking upstairs." So she didn't want me to do that. She thought it would go bad. Happy Bucks this month is going to go to fish. Anybody got a problem with that? Good.
We don't like the
Happy
executive
Bucks.
director. Oh, wait.
Yep.
Happy Bucks. Here.
Oh, $10 to start. All right. Good deal. All right.
Give money to
Go for it.
announcements. I got the microphone.
Okay. Are you, my turn? Is that okay? Okay. Evidently, the email blast through Runner, it's not working in my phone. Okay. Didn't go through. Because some of y'all, most of y'all said you didn't get my email blast from Club Runner about the project for August, right? So they changed, if you haven't gone in there, they changed the whole process. And it's beyond my comprehension. I couldn't figure it out. And then they had a thing saying, do you like this process? I said, no. Turn it back. It doesn't work. So anyway, I sent y'all an e-blast about the service project. This is our 8th year to do PB&J. If you have a business and you want to do it on your business, call us and we'll come collect your stash. We'll take a picture for Facebook. If you've got a service project, maybe a church group or kids want to do this for the month of August, call us and we'll come take a picture. But every week for the next 4 weeks, bring your PB&J stash up here. At the end of the month, we'll take a picture and then Vince and I will carry all this up to County Shared Ministries probably about the first week in August when we get all that collected because it takes a while. We're going around to businesses too to see if they want to participate. So thank y'all for doing that, and thank you for those that donated blood this last time. I think they had like 21 people. There were like almost 10 Rotarians, so thank y'all for doing that. I was a recipient, so really happy. Anyway, we do that blood drive every quarter in our office, so if y'all are interested. Anyway, don't forget to put this on your calendar. Thank you. Okay. No. Yeah, any jar size and just, peanut butter and jelly, if, anybody wants to donate, even if it's just one jar or whatever, come to my office, I'll take a picture of it and put it on Facebook. We do that to all our clients. We send a list to our clients, and I go around with businesses and ask if they want to participate, so it's during the month of August. Thank you.
And we're gonna do the contest again where, ladies will bring, do we wanna do ladies do peanut butter and boys do jelly, or do we wanna do the other way around? How do we wanna do it?
Just the most bottles in general.
So, we'll do that where ladies bring the peanut butter and the boys bring the jelly. And we'll see whose pile is bigger.
All right.
It's gonna be a lot.
Gentlemen, will bring jelly.
I'm just happy we're getting peanut butter and jelly. Thanks, guys. Good stuff. Kate?
I have 2 seats left at my table for a fundraiser for Fish Hunt County Shared Ministries. It is next Friday, not this Friday, but next Friday at 6 p.m. at Highland Terrace. This one is called 68-Hour Heroes, and the whole point of what we're doing here is from the time that kids leave school on Friday until they get back to school on Monday, they go 68 hours potentially without any food. So we are hoping to fund the entire MARC program, which is Meals for At-Risk Kids. If you would like to attend, it's free. I'm already hosted the table, and it's going to be a great dinner, so please let me know. I need 2 more guests.
Got it down, right?
Oh, no, I didn't get you down because I didn't know you said yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I said yes to
Never
my
mind, I
wife.
have no spots left. Christy's not coming. Okay, got 1 more spot left.
So I've been in Happy Bucks today just as a reminder. Rafa is changing up our fall banquet this year, and we are having it at Family Fellowship this year, and we're calling it the Ripple Effect in honor of our 25th anniversary of ministry, and it will be an immersive experience this year. So registration is now open at supportrafa.com, and we're also looking for event sponsors. If you've never been to a Rafa event, this is casual, it's free to attend, and you get to see how you would do if you were facing an unplanned pregnancy and see if you could find a way to make it work in our community.
Good stuff. All right, Colleen's happy. Is that it? Okay, I thought we had 100% at this table, but it's okay. All right, who else we got? Yeah, you can be my date.
Roy and I are leaving next Monday going to watch my son-in-law shoot pool in Las Vegas. So I understand you have gambling there, so if anybody knows a place in town that does payday loans, please contact me at the end of the year.
And you?
Oh, I'm just happy.
All right. Getting started giving that money away early. All right, good stuff. Okay, front table. Hitting y'all first this time. All right.
Just happy.
Good stuff. All right. Here we go. Coming around to you, John. All right. Thank you. Who else we got? Dr. Salmon.
On my way back from Colorado yesterday, going through Gainesville, a truck in front of me dropped some heavy object on the ground, which I promptly hit, blew out a tire. The happy part was that it happened right in front of a tire shop.
Yeah, they probably got that truck going back and forth. All right, who else we got? Rich.
Yes, I'm real happy because I was finally able to sell my rental home in Rockwall, and so that burden, I'm relieved of that burden, so that's great.
Good stuff. All right. Hey, Debbie.
Well, I'm almost always happy, but in case y'all don't know or aren't aware, tomorrow night is the kickoff for Brawls for the Cause, Landon's Winery, 6 p.m. Be there or be square.
Yep. All right, David.
I just remembered why I'm still happy. And the reason I'm still happy is 2 days ago, my great-grandson was at our house, almost 7 months old, and I got to give him his bottle. First time I got to feed him. That made me very happy.
Good stuff. By the way, David invited me to go skydiving, and I said yes. But I had to ask my wife first, because I got high blood pressure, and she said, oh, it's okay, go ahead. So the insurance is paid up, yeah. So, all right. So, absolutely. All right. So, Deck of Destiny, our club members buy tickets, and then I find some nice lady who is a guest to reach in here and pull one ticket and hand it to me. Thank you. All right. And glasses on. 1, 3, 3, 9, 5.
Yes.
And the only two important numbers, 8,
Yes.
4.
How about it?
8, 4. Ah, he's lucky again. All right.
There it is.
Good stuff. All right, here we go.
We're looking for the Ace of Spades, right? Yes, sir. We just look for the Queen of Spades. You know, the black lady.
Ace of spades. Pick it up.
Now, how about the Queen of Hearts?
No, ace of spades,
Ace
lady.
of Spades.
Oh, 7 of diamonds. Oh. Thank you, Troy. There were some announcements I was supposed to make, but I don't remember what they were now. You'll notice that happens a lot.
Good job.
One announcement though, so last year I had the opportunity, because of Rotary, to be on the on Congressman Self's committee to select a veteran to be recognized by the House. We recognized as a club, we submitted the paperwork and everything and got James Adams. And then there was a ceremony in Plano. I'm going to do that again. So if you're a veteran, be prepared. You're probably going to get nominated. We're going to do that again. What was the other announcement I was supposed to make?
That's what your piece of paper is for.
Yeah, but I didn't write it down.
Peanut butter and jelly.
Peanut butter and jelly. Boys are doing jelly, girls are doing peanut butter. I think we did it the other way the last time because peanut butter is more expensive, I think.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Now that Dylan and Millicent are back, we'll start on the goals committee because I didn't want to do that without y'all. I think that's it. Anything else? Anyway. Dwayne, do you want to introduce the presentation today?
I'll do that.
Very good.
Our program today is Kevin Sawatsky. He broke down while he's over in Italy and had to walk 500 miles. No, wait a minute.
Trying to get home.
Yeah. He walked across Italy. Spain. Close enough. He walked across Spain 500 miles and still has feet to show for it. So welcome to our Rotary Club today. Welcome to our program. We're glad to have you today, sir.
I was going through this. Is it possible to dim? Awesome. Well, thank you. My name is Kevin Sawatsky. I'm a real estate broker here in Greenville, and it's just a pleasure to be here. I think stories are kind of the fabric of our community. It doesn't take very long to spend any time with anyone, and you start hearing a story, and that changes completely, oftentimes, your perception of the person. So as I went through our 4,600 slides and tried to cull out a couple of them, I decided it's not possible to really communicate the experience. We were out of the country for 40 days. In that 40 days, we flew to Madrid. We took a bus up to a little town called San Sebastian. We then walked from St. Jean all the way to Santiago de Compostela, just a little over 500 miles. When you're walking, everything's in slow motion. So there's so much detail, and it's just not possible to communicate that detail. So my purpose today is really to give you some impressions of what Spain is like, what the Camino de Santiago is like, so that you kind of know sort of what that experience was. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the history. The history in Spain is incredible. Everything started in 1200 and 1300 and 1400, and it kind of puts our history a little bit to shame, at least in terms of long. We were in Pamplona. The cathedral in Pamplona is built on Roman ruins that were from an area that was built up in 79 AD. So it's just incredible history. You can see that in history books and portrayed much better than I would do that. So this is kind of our impressions of the trip. Someone once told me, this is a long time ago, that it's really important every once in a while to try to attempt something that you're not 100% sure that you can finish. And that started me on some long-distance motorcycling and a bunch of stuff, but this trip was a little bit of that. How many of you, if I asked, would say you are a hiker? Okay, those of you who raised your hand, I'm not one of you. The longest walk I ever accomplished prior to this was our practice trip 2 weeks before we left, and that was 10 miles from Farmersville to Merritt and back. Nothing like this trip. That was our preparation. We'll talk about that in a minute. Before I start, though, I don't want to miss the opportunity to say some huge thank yous and introduce a couple of people. My wife, Renee, is over here. Huge thank you. She took over my business and made it run flawlessly for the 6 weeks that we were gone. Took care of the house, took care of the dogs and the horses and all of those things that needed to be done. One time a day, she gave me a report when I called her, and we talked through anything that needed to be done. But she did just an amazing job of supporting and allowing me to physically be gone for 6 weeks. And Steve and Linda Rosehart are here at our table too. Steve was one of our participants. You'll see some awesome pictures of him in the slides. Steve and Linda have been here in Greenville for a very long time, 80s. So Steve has been one of my best friends for 20 years, for the 20 years we've lived here. So a huge thank you to my team. I have just a small group of agents that kind of took over. I have a friend who is a real estate broker who stepped in as broker stuff was needed. I'll tell you, leaving everything and going 7 hours time zones away for 6 weeks is a true disconnect from your life. It's not a 2-week vacation where it kind of takes you the first week to kind of feel like you're on vacation, and then you get a day of vacation, and then it takes you the second week to kind of feel like you've got to start thinking about what you're going to face when you get back. That amount of time really pulls you apart from what you do, and because of what so many people did, I really only had 1 or 2 real estate conversations in 6 weeks, and the rest of the time we could focus on, well, 2 things. One thing every day, walk. Second part, and you'll see a little bit of that, is eat. I grew up as a missionary kid, so please forgive me. You know, missionaries do slides, and I did learn that you can't have hundreds and hundreds, so I really don't have 4,600 here. I've tried to pare it down, and I will rapidly go through some impression slides. So that's enough preamble. Okay, so who went? Picture of me up there. You see Steve up at the top. Many of you know Robert Hall from Prairie Coffee. Robert and Cherry own Prairie Coffee Company. Over on the upper left is my daughter Kinsley. Kinsley is the hiker in our group. In the last 4 years, she's hiked in excess of 8,000 miles. She completed the Pacific Crest Trail from Mexico to Canada, the Continental Divide Trail from Mexico to Canada, and the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine. and now another 500 miles. So she does this without even thinking, and she carried all of her gear, carried her tent, sometimes several days of food, made all her meals. Whole different trip than this. This she would describe as a babysitting service, where she had 3 old guys she had to make sure got up every morning and got 15 miles to the next destination. So very different. My daughter Michaela is in the lower left. She joined us for about the last 10 days of our trip. And then Steve and Linda's eldest daughter, Naomi's in the middle. So we started out as 4, we ended up as 6 walking into the plaza in front of the cathedral in Santiago de Compostela. And I will tell you, that's a once-in-a-lifetime kind of a thing, right? To do a trip with your 2 best friends and your daughter and then daughters, and then someone, Naomi is just like another daughter to us. We all do things together. So that's an amazing group to get a chance to be with and see this adventure together with. So we did start out, this is a shameless advertisement for Prairie Coffee. This was from our very first morning. We gathered there, left, and the ladies drove us to the airport. We flew to Madrid, as oftentimes happens. Plans aren't exactly what you end up finding when you get there, which meant that we ended up, instead of taking an hour flight up into France, we ended up taking a 6.5-hour bus ride, and we still got there that day. So that was our transportation. Here's the Camino, though. How many of you before today have ever heard of the Camino de Santiago? Okay, so a few people. The Camino is, at least for us, is this path from St. John, which is actually in the south of France. This is the Pyrenees in the south of France, and this was our hike to Santiago at the other end. There is another little, you can actually go all the way to the ocean. Some people say that's really finishing the Camino. We had to eventually decide we couldn't just stay there, we had to come home. And so we did get there, but we went there by bus. But this kind of gives you an idea of the number of days. We walked for 35 days, about 15 to 20 miles a day. And so you end up staying in all of these little places that you've never heard of. And I literally could not tell you, I could not name all the places we stayed. Kinsley was, well, Steve started out by booking our hostels. We stayed in hostels, you'll see that in a minute. Kinsley kept doing that, so they were acutely aware of the trip planning. I heard once that every couple has one person who has all the details, the tickets, the reservations, and the other person says, was that trip today? Steve and Kinsley were very much the planners. Robert and I were along for the ride, and it was a wonderful thing. The Camino is actually a pilgrimage, Roman Catholic pilgrimage that people have hiked for nearly 1,200 years. So this isn't something that kind of no one's ever heard about, a little trail through the woods. This is an established process. The hostels have been around for a long time. The cafes and the restaurants, the cathedrals and chapels you see are all hundreds of years old. So you're walking through all of that on a path that, if you think back 1,200 years, people are walking in sandals and robes, and it's monks, and it's people looking to find something or leave something or finish something or start something. And so our process of doing this hike, although everybody does it for a different reason, there is really a certain element of people feeling like there's purpose to it. It's not just another adventure, check off the box. And we all had different reasons, and I'm happy someday if you ever want to ask me my things that I take away from the Camino. There are lots of different things to learn, but here's one of the things that I sent out not too long before we left, and it scared the living daylights out of us, because remember I said we went from Farmersville to Merritt and back? You know what the elevation gain between Farmersville and Merritt is?
245 feet.
About 4 inches. So this is the start of our trip, and in our very first day, in our first 16 miles, we climbed 3,600 feet in elevation. So if you put that in perspective, that's 3/5 of a mile up and down. Kind of a nice little flat spot here. This is what you're sort of excited about. And then you do it again, and then flat spot, you do it again, and you think you're done. No more hills, we're gonna be okay. And it nails you with this one at the end. And so our preparation, as minimal as it was, I don't think we could have prepared for that, not without going to Colorado and hiking mountains. I think that's the only thing. And of course, Kinsley did that, so she was incredibly prepared for it. I put the picture of the shell out on this because that's the logo for the Camino. Every pilgrim has a shell like that on their backpack. Some people have it as a patch or a sticker, but most people carry that. Because this is a pilgrimage, there are some things you can only do on this trip if you're a pilgrim. And here's an example. When you get to the beginning, they give you a little passport that you get stamped a couple, 3 times a day. Every chapel, cathedral, place you stay, cafes all have stamps, and they stamp it and very carefully date it. If you don't have that, you can't stay at the hostels. The hostels are pilgrim only. So you aren't in the middle of a bunch of people who are just sort of touring the countryside. And so you're with people who are all kind of thinking the same thing, doing the same thing, and that's the symbol that you look for. You'll see some other places that the shell appears. On here, you'll see all of the different ways you can actually do this. Here's Santiago, but these are all ways that people get there. We chose to come from here and walk across. That's the Camino Frances. But there are lots and lots of different places people start. We ran into a young man from Croatia, I think I'm right, Croatia, who hitchhiked into central France and started his walk way up here and was walking through. We met people who did long walks, short walks, multiple year walks. Sometimes we met a couple from Australia who, this was her 8th Camino Frances, 8th Camino. She did a couple of other ones. This was his 7th. They were in their late 70s. So this is kind of one of those things, and I had no idea. So kind of want to talk a little bit about why. Steve and Robert and I have had a tradition since Steve turned 50. Steve started this actually, of doing an adventure for our big birthday. So when Steve turned 50, we started out the day at Topgolf, which is kind of, Topgolf had just started then, so it was kind of a big deal. We went over to DKC, Dallas Karting Complex, and if you've not done the go-karts there, they're 60 miles an hour and you're 4 inches off the ground. That was a cool way to spend the afternoon. And then we did the David Weiland thing and we went skydiving that night. So that was Steve's adventure. We've done snowmobiling, we've done deep sea fishing, we've done ATVs in Arkansas. That's kind of our adventures. So this was my birthday. I turned 60 the very first day of our hike, and over a period of time decided this is how I wanted to celebrate, never really dreaming that people would agree to take off that much time and do it with me. So when I say thank yous, that's a huge part of that too. So, but the whys. So this was when we woke up on the morning of my birthday, that was our view. San Sebastian is a little town. This is the river that you see in the middle is the division between Spain and France. We're on the Spanish side. And so we woke up to that, had this amazing breakfast, and it was just absolutely the most incredible, memorable way to sit across the table from my daughter and across from Steve and Robert in Spain, looking at France to celebrate a birthday. So that's reason number one. Reason number two, 4 years ago, May 27th, 2021, I was in a motorcycle accident. Some of you remember that. That was in California. And this is what I woke up to. I had the presence of mind to take a picture. I'm not really sure where that came from. But so they told me that I would have a leg that was longer than the other, that it would take me 6 months to get out of a wheelchair, all of those things. 4 years later to the day, I was walking in Spain as part of a 500-mile trip. And in terms of thank yous, man, where's Teresa? Terry Sadler was my PT guy. I will tell you, it took tons of people to make that happen. I spent a bunch of 2021 figuring out how to walk again, and that's not something you do on your own. So this was a celebration of that, kind of acknowledging that. Kinsley, I told you was a hiker. This is from one of her hikes, a bunch of people that she hiked with. This was her inviting us into her world, because she can show us all the pictures and tell us all the stories we want, and we don't get it. But this was her inviting us into our world, so that was an exciting part of this trip. And then Michaela, my daughter, turned 30 on the trip. So we had all this stuff to celebrate. Aside from that, you kind of think through, at 60, you kind of want to take a moment to kind of think back, kind of the celebration part, and the look forward. And when you're walking, you've got a lot of time to do that. And those backpacks were our life, everything we had for 6 weeks. And that's just not our American thing, is it? Think of all the stuff that's just in the trunk of your car that you hardly ever use, but you haul around every single day. We just don't live that way, and it was an amazing perspective to have on a period of time, having to look at all that stuff. This was somewhere between Farmersville and Merritt. This was our big preparation day. Some of us walked a little bit before that. Some of us didn't really walk much before that, but you see how happy we are? And that's because of that 4-inch elevation change. It was no big deal. We thought we were all set and ready to go. We really didn't know what we were going to face. This is from that trip too. Okay, so we get started. Very first thing you do is you go into this little town. St. John is the official start. And you go into this room, and this is the official Pilgrim Center. And they give you your little credentials that you're going to get stamped. They give you some information. They all speak languages. Some of them know English. And you all of a sudden start to think, this is going to be really, really, really different than we're used to. We heard accents from every corner of the world. We heard languages from every corner of the world. We had no idea what people were saying much of the time. But it's amazing. Your hands and pointing and talking enough gets you through a lot of stuff when you didn't think you could communicate. So that's where you start, and then you actually take that first step. And think about any trip you take. That first step, especially with one like this, we walked 1.2 million steps. That coming through that arch was kind of this weird, we're actually here. We're actually doing this. Do we know what we're doing? Can we actually do this? That process, I took a picture of our shoes. You'll see they're all nice and clean. Mine are the black ones there. They're just pristine. They're brand new. It's awesome. You'll see what they look like at the end. Day 2, you actually pass this sign, and every hiker actually takes a picture here, I think. That's 790 kilometers to the cathedral. And you stop there, and it's one of those things that you just don't think about. What is 800 kilometers? And actually, you already did 20 the day before. So, but what does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that mean? But you see, we're all smiling. And at the beginning of all trips, we all smile, right? Okay, big question we always get is, where'd you stay? Almost every night we stayed in a hostel. They call them albergues. And there are a variety of kinds. The little towns have a municipal albergue. Some are private. Some are run by a church. Some they call rural. They're kind of out in the country. Some are really not much more than a few beds in kind of somebody's house. But you reserve these. And our goal was to kind of do that as we went along. Because we had a fairly large group, it kind of decided we needed to maybe reserve out. We were at peak season. We left on May 19th, got back here June 27th. And that's really peak season. So we kind of ended up reserving out from there. This is our very first one. You don't have any idea what this is going to be like. So we walked up, and this was the sign, and we were all excited. This is really going to be cool. And it actually was a really nice place to stay. But I'm going to quickly show you some of the other ones. That kind of looks nice, doesn't it? That's from Sawatsky. This is a huge one. There are 280 beds or something in here, and you see it's part of a monastery. It's kind of a cool place. I'll show you a picture from inside in a minute. Here's an outside of another one. The albergue is on the right. It's actually attached to a chapel from 1642. In fact, Steve, was it you who discovered the door?
Kinsley did.
Kinsley discovered the door. Right across from our room, we actually had a room with 4 beds, and they gave us, so we had our own little room. That was cool. Walk across the hall, there's a door with no label, nothing on it. Open it, there's another door, and you walk in, and you're upstairs in the choir loft of the chapel. It was just this weird, you'd never expect it, you couldn't plan it, and that we kind of started learning. We kind of need to be looking around and looking for stuff like that. But that's when we stayed at. Most of them looked like this. You walked in, kind of a street, and there were doors, and you walked in, and there was a host or a hostess, and they checked you in, checked your reservation. First thing they ask you for is your credentials, and then they ask you for your passport. In Europe, they always want your real passport, but that was the second thing. Credentials were first. Every albergue had something about Wi-Fi, because everybody's looking for Wi-Fi. They had something about taxis, because remember, we're only going 15 miles a day, and some days it's really tempting to get there 15 minutes from now instead of 7 hours from now. So everyone, there were taxi advertisements all over the place. And then at the bottom, we carried all of our stuff, but there are lots of services that allow you to just leave your stuff with them and they'll take it to the next town. So we passed a lot of people who were carrying just a little pack with water bottles or whatever it was. And that's what this Jocko Trans is. So you saw all of those advertisements in all of the albergues. This was also something we saw, all of them. Can't wear your shoes inside. So you'd leave your nasty, smelly, wet, muddy shoes up front, which was brilliant actually. And you'd also leave your hiking sticks. Those two things were never, I don't really think we ever were allowed to take them in. Some of the rooms were huge. At that big, gigantic monastery albergue, it was this huge room with little alcoves and shelves going all the way up to the ceiling, hundreds of shoes. Most of them looked a lot like this. But bunk beds, most of us haven't been in a bunk bed since we were a little smaller. So Steve and Kinsley were generally gracious and they let the big guys, larger guys, take the bottom bunks, but we kind of moved that around a little bit. But here's just some pictures. This was the nicest one we stayed in. We had our own little cubby, it had curtains, it had a little plug-in by our head and a little light, and that was nice, but most of them were kind of like this. A whole room of bunk beds. Some of the rooms, this is one, those walls have got to have been 36-inch thick stone walls on the outside of it. It was like a little old barn that someone converted and put all these bunk beds in. I really thought that albergues were going to be a negative to this trip. It's kind of like I'll grind it out, you have to do it, I guess, because you can't afford to do hotels every night. They actually became really a part of the character of the trip. Our hosts and hostesses were amazing. They were welcoming and they would care for you and give you directions and it just became a very enjoyable part of the trip that was not really ever expected. Another nice one with little curtains going across. Another little bit more normal one. You get, those of you who sleep in the same room as somebody, there's sounds and multiply that by 30 or 60 or 80, and there's a chorus that happens in those rooms. Laundry. I said we only take 2 sets of clothes, so that means you do laundry every day. So we kind of got into a routine. Get up in the morning, leave between 5 o'clock and 6:30, hike our day. Somewhere in there we'd have second breakfast, sometimes third breakfast, lunch, sometimes a snack, get into our albergue, check in. I walked into the shower with my clothes on. You wash your clothes in the shower and then take them out and put them on a line somewhere. Put on your fresh clothes that you washed yesterday. That was and then you take a nap because you've been walking and not hiker. So naps are important. You get up late afternoon, go for a very late dinner. Spain eats very late. They love to do 8 o'clock, 8:30. By then we needed to kind of be wrapping our day up. But do that, then go to bed and rinse and repeat 35 times. So laundry, this was a pretty common sight. You get to outside these and there'd just be rows and rows of lines of everything's just sitting out there because everybody does the same thing. No one wants to carry more than that. We did, however, have a couple of times where we had gracious hosts who did it for us. This was one, the sign outside said laundry, wash and dry, €7. And we were like, oh, that's not bad, we can put a load together. So we went, paid, and we were walking towards the machines, and they were like, oh, no, we do that. And so a couple hours later, our clothes were all folded and on our bed. And you know what? When you've been walking all day, you remember that for a very long time. So, okay. I'm trying to move along, because, missionary slideshow. The way. Camino means the way. That's really what the word means. And so, in 2010, Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez made a movie called The Way. If you ever want to watch it, it's actually a pretty decent movie. You'll get a little sense of the trip from that. But The Way is so many things. The part that I want to give you some impressions of, and I'm going to go somewhat rapidly through these pictures, is just what it felt like to walk, what the path was like, what the scenery was like. Some of our paths were pretty rough, but look at the scenery. We were very fortunate. This year, like in North Texas, they had a very, very wet spring. So the flowers and the green were incredible. Lots of people who've walked it many times were like, this is not the way it normally is, so don't get used to this, it's gorgeous. So our second day, ended up being very wet. It was 40 degrees and pouring rain on us through the Pyrenees as we walked along the France-Spain border. And we had these beautiful clean shoes for a minute. And they never were clean again. But you just kind of had to pick your way through. This was Robert. If you talk to Robert, ask him about the path to a town called Zubiri. It's a stone formation called the Dragon's Claws, Dragon's Back, Dragon something. It is broken stone going the direction you're going. And you have these little crevices in between that are just a little smaller than your shoe, so you can't step down into them. But then they go up, and what's on top feels like you're on top of a ridge. And so it makes for very, very slow walking. Crossed rivers, crossed creeks, crossed all sorts of things. Sometimes the path was beautiful and wide and incredibly well maintained. Some of it was concrete, some of it was stone, some of it was pavers, some of it was gravel, and then some of it was just whatever the path was, and you just walked it up or down. You walk these little trails, you come around a corner and see this little tunnel of green in front of you, and you kind of want to see what's on the other side, but it's cool, and you've been out and it's been hot, and it's cool, and it's quiet, and you're just kind of walking along unless you happen to be talking to someone. Stone path. We'll talk about people in a minute. One of the unexpected things on this trip was the flowers. I have never seen this many flowers growing outside of a nursery in my entire life. Every path on both sides, as far as you could see, was wildflowers. So this is just for miles and miles and miles and miles. Poppies, red poppies, white and yellow daisies, thistles that were 8 feet tall and had these huge purple flowers on them. Just absolutely gorgeous. Walking into town. Have any of you ever, with a backpack on your back, walked through a town? It's really weird. We don't do that in the US. In fact, when we see someone walking, half the time we're concerned, right? We don't do that. They got a car, right? Here you get very used to it. But what we found was empty towns. Spotlessly clean, incredibly manicured, but completely quiet. And so you'd walk through these little towns. A lot of times it was because it was siesta time in the afternoon. Sometimes I think they're just towns that, like in North Texas, a lot of our little towns kind of empty out, or have emptied out. Every town has a cathedral in the middle of it. The first thing you see as you're coming into town is the spire of the cathedral. Vineyards, especially kind of in that middle section, vineyards as far as you can see. And then you cross rivers. There weren't a ton of them, but you'd have these gigantic, beautiful bridges, stone arch bridges going across. And a lot of times that was early morning or late night. These mile markers, kilometer markers I guess they are, were everywhere. Several of them per kilometer. So you see the shell, that's the official logo of the Camino, and you see these yellow arrows. It's not necessary to have a map or have any kind of guidance. Everywhere there's a possibility of going 2 different ways, someone either has put that or they've painted a big, gigantic yellow arrow. They were everywhere. But you did kind of look for those numbers to start decreasing. You see we've gone from 790 to 550. Murals. Every town seemed to have these gigantic, huge murals that people painted. And sometimes they were science, sometimes they were spiritual, sometimes they were countryside, sometimes they were a local hero, sometimes they were gigantic beer ads, but all hand-painted murals and very cool. This is Steve, being Einstein. This is one of my very favorite pictures from the whole trip. This is the town we're staying in over here, and it's probably 1.5 miles off. But we came over this hill and this little bench was there, and you could see the path in front of you. So you knew where you were going, but it was just a gorgeous spot to just sit and relax. Of course, that's the 3 of us. Our sunrises when we started early, which we tried to do to beat the heat, were gorgeous. We didn't really see sunsets other than once we were in town because we were trying to be done with walking by somewhere around 1 or 2 o'clock. Spain loves these signs in the cities, and you'll see that we have several of them. This is in a gorgeous town called Leon. That's the cathedral, which Leon's cathedral is amazing. It has 2,000 square meters of stained glass. So 2,000 square yards. It's stunning inside. And again, I'm not trying to give you the history or the cathedrals or the culture or anything, but you just stood inside and you just did this. And so was everyone else. Absolutely stunning. Walking into a city, I said, if you walked into a town, walk into a city. Think about walking into McKinney from here. And you walk into McKinney, and the first thing you get to is some of the out, kind of by the airport there. And then you walk a little further, and there's some businesses. You walk a little further, is residential, and then you get to downtown, and then you start working your way out. This is Leon. Leon is about 250,000 people, so it's McKinney size. It's really weird to walk in a city, and nobody looks at you weird because there are hundreds of you. In 2024, 500,000 people completed a Camino, 500,000 people. So this isn't something that 10 of us got together and decided to do. It's a pretty significant group. Lots of signs going into towns. Here's a not so defined trail. Those are the kind you really work very hard to not roll your ankle, and Kinsley just danced down them. It was so easy for her. I don't know how that works. Coming into towns that are just absolutely gorgeous. Water everywhere, rivers, these huge bridges, and then especially at the peaks. And of course the value of having to climb up those nasty hills was you'd get to the top and you get to see something like this. Interesting thing, in the US, our towns tend to be along rivers. That's a common reason to start a town, which means you're always at the lowest point, right? In Spain and a lot of Europe, what were those towns 500 years ago? They were castles. Where are castles built? Yeah, so every day, at the end of the day, when we were absolutely beat, the last thing we had to do was climb a mountain. It was just one of those things you just don't ever think about, but it was one of those things that you pick up as you're going through. And this is what you do when you're too hot. This was Michaela. She decided that was the fastest way to cool down. Okay, another question we get a lot of, and I will wrap up very quickly here, is what did we eat? Our meals were generally very large group meals, or the 4 of us going to a restaurant. That was kind of the 2. So I'll just go through some. The large groups were generally at an albergue. Most of them had a dinner or a breakfast option. Pretty inexpensive, 12 or 13 euro for a 3-course dinner, including wine and water. Actually, it was typically about the same amount as it cost to stay in the albergue. But that's where you got to meet all the people. This couple's from Utah. They'd been together for 10 years. This was our first night, so for 16 miles, he had carried a big bottle of champagne so they could celebrate that night. And just great stories, great stories. I'm going to go rapidly, but you just see there's people everywhere, and everybody has to eat. So you end up seeing people just like you do on the trail. Second and third breakfast became favorites. Chocolate croissants are really good with cafe americano. But we also passed these little stands. You can't read it probably, but it says donativo in the back. So it was just sitting there. Someone set it out, and you just put some money in the box. And my favorite thing were the olives. And these are all olive trees back here. So they just came straight off of there into the basket. Oh, sorry. This was kind of a neat one. When I started this trip, a college friend saw that we were there and said, "Hey, I don't know where you are, but we have some longtime friends who are missionaries in Spain, and they have a food truck." And we got to see them 2 days later. They actually were missionaries in Croatia for 30 years, retired to Pennsylvania, and now they come several times a year and spend 2 weeks at this food truck volunteering. And their purpose, obviously, is they're selling the food. But they get to spend hours and hours just sitting and talking to people about their experience and who they are and where they are in their spiritual pilgrimage. I love fish. All the fish there had heads and tails on it. There's a good example. Steve loves ice cream. And so at least once a day, sometimes twice, sometimes more, we had ice cream. Lots of people serving. There's no tipping in Spain, so one of the things you notice is that no one really pushes you away from your table. It doesn't need to be reseated. They're okay if you stay. Everything's incredibly quiet, slow pace. And then sometimes you have to just drink water, and sometimes you do it by a statue where he's drinking water too. All right, blisters. Kinsley became our nurse. Steve didn't have any, Robert and I had lots of them, and you just deal with them as you go. It's just part of the deal. Last thing I want to go through is friends. We met so many people, and I could go through and name all these people. They'd be meaningless to you, but these were people that we saw again and again and again on the trip. And when you walk with someone for 6 hours and you hear their whole life story and why they're doing this, your relationship is different than when you wave at each other on the street. And so a lot of these people, as we look at this picture, we see stories. This one I particularly want to point out. Tanya's from Australia. Larry is from San Diego. Larry met us the second morning and hiked straight with us for 11 days. He was like part of our group, even though we stayed at different places. Tanya was on, I think, the second or third day and was with us until that section along the Meseta where she decided she was going to bike. She had pre-planned to bike across it, so left us. But literally 8, 9, 10, 11 days, you're with someone who you didn't know from some place in the world that you're not familiar with. Kat is 30. She's from Holland. She has a degenerative eye disease. She will be blind. Her doctors start telling her she'll be blind in a year. She decided she wanted to walk this while she could still see it. And you think about that for a 30-year-old, I think a lot of 30-year-olds would find something else other than walking for 5 weeks along a trail in Spain. She was kind of amazing. This was a family. That's Rumi and Zen. Those are the two kids. Zen's 2, Rumi's 4. Their parents took 4 months off. They're from out west in the US. They decided that their kids were growing up too fast. And so they were going to take them hiking. He took a 4-month leave of absence, and they walk as far as Rumi can walk a day, which is typically somewhere between 5 and 8 miles a day. And he carries Zen. So he's carrying a pack plus, so 40 pounds, something like that. This is another father-daughter. He's in his 70s, so about 10 years older than me. She's in her 40s, about 10 years older than Kinsley. But we got to see lots of those kind of family things. Knut, over on the right-hand side, was our host one night. He's from Denmark, and he just bought a albergue, and he's a host, and he cooks, and he cleans, and he makes people happy. He found out that Steve loves ice cream, so he came up to me after dinner, and he said, "Steve wants ice cream, doesn't he?" And I was like, "Yeah," and he said, "Well, we don't have any in our town, but if you come with me, I have an idea." And we got in this little van, and we drove 5 kilometers to a town where they did sell ice cream, and we picked up ice cream and brought it to Steve. The 3 ladies here, the 2 older ones, live half a year in Geneva, half a year in Paris. That's Crystal's daughter. We spent a lot of time hiking with them. Pastor Jim's from Phoenix. He has a church that is almost all seniors. He says his average age is in the 70s, and he has 800 of them. And really kind of neat story. Okay. The one thing that I just, tons of experiences along the way, but here's one I want to communicate. About 350 miles into this trip, you come up this very long, very difficult path, and you get to this big stone pillar with an iron cross at the top. And as you prepare for the trip, what you learn is that this is a destination for pilgrims to come and leave something at the cross. So most people will bring stones from home. You see the pile here? This is the top, but this is the pile. It's huge. And it's not only stones. You'll find jewelry, you'll find notes, you'll find all sorts of things. Pastor Jim that I just showed you, from his church, he asked if anyone in his church wanted to have anything brought and left at the cross. He did a series on pilgrimage, Our Christian Life as a Pilgrimage. 100 people sent him an email. He left a flash drive with 100 emails at the foot of the cross, took a picture of it and sent it back by his blog to his church. It was quiet and peaceful. Stefan, the guy in the red, instead of a backpack, he had this cart that he pulled behind him. We couldn't really figure that out until we discovered that it was full of rocks. He pulled those rocks up and down those hills for 350 miles, and he had had his priest write in Latin several things that he wanted out of his life. And so when we left him, he was sitting at the bottom of the cross with a Sharpie, transcribing those paragraphs onto rocks to leave there. Those are just the kinds of things that you saw along the way that you really don't want to miss. So the end, here's the end. This is the picture that everybody takes when they get to Santiago de Compostela. That's the massive cathedral. It's huge and beautiful. I really like this picture because here's Stefan. There's a couple here that we walked with a lot. This is Crystal and Geraldine, and of course our group. And you get to the end, and it's not only just a physical completion, it's I've moved forward. There's that kind of a feeling. At the same time, it was almost a letdown because you're done. And at the beginning, when things were difficult, you wanted to kind of move forward. Okay, let's get this day done. Check it off. And you really didn't want to here at the end. At the end, when you turn in your credentials, that's this with all of our stamps, they give you a certificate if you've done at least 100 kilometers. So we all have our certificate. And then we took a picture of our shoes at the end that really do look a lot different. There was one last piece of our trip. Like I said, we took a bus out to the ocean because we didn't want to take another 3 days to hike it. And there's a final mile marker, 00 out there. There's one at the cathedral as well, but the mile marker 00. So that's us at that. And then we came home, and this is what we got met by at the end. Our wives saying, "Welcome home." And no, we would not walk 500 more. Okay, unless there are questions, I've overstayed, so my apologies for that. Yes?
It's not too much to ask. In the city, you spend like 12, 14 euros. That's like almost $15. How much do you end up spending outside of airfare?
Including airfare, we were a little under $100 a day. So that's including airfare and bus travel and all of those things. It's very reasonable to do, and you can certainly do it with less than that. What's that?
Do people walk both ways?
No, because the goal is to end up in Santiago. The church teaches that that's where St. James' bones are. In fact, you kind of go down into little catacombs and you see the little box where those things are. And people would walk that because they wanted to be healed. They wanted to have a problem solved. So the goal is always to get there.
Did you see anybody fall, break a leg, hurt themselves?
We didn't. We heard lots of stories of people who do that. It's every age under the sun. You saw a 2-year-old, and we saw people well into their 80s. So it's the entire gamut. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Oh, you'll get to leave that. No, you can't leave it. So, we have a sort of a tradition. Sort of a tradition. Yeah. So you gotta take a picture. She gets further up. I got that was great. So who's gonna go to Spain and walk for 500 miles? I have trouble walking to the car. Anybody got anything else? No? All right, that's your order for the day.